Lewis Hart for The Ring magazine, joined here backstage with Eddie Hearn just after the presser just concluded for the Ring 3 on Saturday night at Louis Armstrong Stadium. Yeah, I mean, colourful to say the least. It was an interesting one, but yeah, what are your initial thoughts?
Well, I got $26.
Yeah.
No, I've got, I'll show you.
Go on.
Fucking what a result. My dad said to me, you ever walk past the fiver on the floor, I'll give you a clip round the ear. And I could have got more actually, but I thought someone needs that out there. Yeah. I think as we leave Times Square, we'll be making someone's day. Yeah. Eventful, colourful, crazy. Yes, all of those. I think the two main event fights are just sensational. I think the whole card is. I mean, Puello Matias is a great fight. I can't wait for Morel Khataev, to be honest with you. And I think Shakur Zepeda and Sheeraz Berlanga, two great fights. So a little bit of spice, I guess, and yeah, a lot of fun.
I mean, you promoted Edgar for quite a few fights. Do you feel like you saw this sort of change in him sort of after the Canelo fight and this and that as the fights got bigger and obviously the money got bigger, where you look at him now and he's sort of got all the chains and the money?
I'll be honest with you, Edgar's actually a good guy. I think he's got a good heart. I think, has the money gone to his head? No, I still think he works hard, and I think he's a good fighter. He's got to be careful that he's definitely focused for this fight, because sometimes, like, that was obviously stuff like that's very premeditated, and like you can get caught up in all the bullshit of all that stuff around it. I've got to be honest with you, I loved what I saw from Hamzah Sheeraz. I think he looked razor focused, and even like Frank Warren and Spencer Brown, they were giving it as well to Edgar. Do you know what I mean? In the head-to-head. And now there's a real solidarity in that team of, let's do this, you know. And if Edgar's not switched on, he'll come unstuck against Sheeraz. I mean, it's difficult because I've worked with Edgar and I do like the guy, you know. But I really like and respect Hamzah as well. I think he's a fine young man, and he's an Essex boy. So
yeah, of course, yeah.
I think he's got a great shot here. I really do, and it's a brilliant fight.
Just want to touch on Shakur. And when it comes to his style, and you know, there's always a lot that gets made of sort of Tom and Jerry and wanting Shakur to be more aggressive. How much do you feel like with Shakur it is a case of him not almost trusting his hands keeping up when it comes to the aggression?
Not really. I think it's a style. You know, we have to remember, I get all this Tom and Jerry stuff. I mean, look, you got to understand, His Excellency is not in the fighter camps in a way that he's looking to, like, you know, look at the longevity of a fighter's career. He just wants entertainment, and he wants it now. He's paying top dollar for entertainment, right? And he wants to entertain a fight fan. So I think it's a little bit, I'm sort of on two sides with it. One side is we want exciting fights. Every time I put on a fight, I want these guys to give us a great fight. The other side is when these guys walk through the gym, they're not taught to have a war or a fight that's going to just be really physically taxing. They're taught about defence, they're taught about skill, they're taught about IQ, hit and don't get hit. And you're just not going to get these fighters changing their style because His Excellency wants an entertaining fight. But what you said is right, when the styles mix well, and that's down to us from the matchmaking side and His Excellency to make the right fights where you'll see the best of those fighters. And I think Shakur against Zepeda is the perfect example of that. Zepeda's going to come forward all night. Shakur's not going to be able to run around the ring, and he doesn't run around the ring anyway. He's just very smart, and he's got. And by the way, this is a dangerous sport. So you got to think about yourself in there. You got to do your best to not get hit. But I get all angles, but I just think this is the kind of fight that Shakur is going to really show his greatness, and I think he's got lots of that.
Yeah. And what's the situation with Imam Khataev? Obviously, come out yesterday news of a 2-year suspension from the International Testing Agency. Obviously, that only sort of is sanctioned sort of by the IBA. Yeah. What is the situation there?
I think I've been in this situation before. And it's like you have a failed test there from another agency, but not an agency that the local commission acknowledges. So for this card, Ring have VADA tested. I mean, I'm not the promoter of this event. I'm just speaking on the, in my opinion of the process. In this situation, it's okay. Yeah. In this situation, the New York State Athletic Commission will say, what is ITA? What is IBA? I don't know what that is. You've been signed up to VADA for this whole camp. You've passed every test. That's who we acknowledge. We don't have an issue.
Okay.
But at the same time, it's a bit like, with Connor and Billy Joe. It's like the board will say, we only acknowledge UCAD. Well, they passed all their UCAD tests. So it's kind of like a grey area. And ultimately, the best thing for the promoter to do in this situation, because they're not the decision maker, ultimately, is to leave it to the commission and say to New York State Athletic Commission, this is the situation. It's your decision, and that's probably what His Excellency's done, and I guess the fight will proceed on that basis.
Yeah. Also, sort of before I do let you go as well, I did want to touch on the Francisco Rodriguez Jr. foul test. Obviously disappointing news to hear that, especially when you look at the punishment that Galal Yafai took as well.
Massively disappointing. I mean, I always feel like you need the opportunity to let the fighter have a hearing and a fair crack, which will happen. But the reality is, one thing we know is that in that ring, Francisco Rodriguez had performance-enhancing substances in his body. And that's sickening, because physically what Galal Yafai had to go through in that fight was really not fair. And there was a lot of people on the night who were questioning this performance that had come out of nowhere, and the engine. And listen, he's a good fighter.
But you can't say that without any knowledge.
But at the same time, it was a performance that shocked a lot of people.
Yeah.
Now, he's got to be given his chance to put his case across. But like Ryan Garcia in the fight with Devin Haney, one thing we know is it was in his system.
Yeah, right.
And that should lead to, obviously, Galal being installed as the mandatory, but also a no contest, like we saw with Ryan Garcia. Now, it can be Rodriguez's fault, or it cannot, and that happens. I'm a believer in that. But what we can't take away is that the fight was unfair, because it was in his system. There's no doubt. That's fact.
Yeah.
And it sickens me that Galal, and what, I want to try. Don't forget, we paid for VADA testing in camp and on the night, and he passed his one in camp. Right?
Post-fight, wasn't it?
Yeah, but he'd already been tested by VADA. We put additional testing in.
Yeah.
And he was on the WBC clean testing program. But on the night, he failed. Yeah. That means, and there's nothing you can do about that, because it's a post-fight test. The fight's already take place. But how do we get into a position where there's almost like a test on the Friday night or Saturday morning before they go in the ring, where you can find out if they've got something in their system? You can't, because you take bloods, you package it up, you send it to Salt Lake City, they do the analysis, and it takes 2 weeks to get a result. But we mustn't allow a fighter to enter the ring with that in his system. But you can't if they've passed the other tests. And then on the night, it's like Ryan.
Yeah, but
maybe Ryan was unlucky. But it was still in his system, unquestionably.
Yeah, but also, I'm right in saying that but in his previous fight, he got a 4-year suspension from the Texas Commission, which I saw. I mean, John Pegg was the one that sent it to me immediately after the fight. That was on BoxRec. Was there any notification as a reason for that to Matchroom and the British Boxing Board of Control on why Rodriguez had a 4-year suspension?
No,
and why no contest?
No. All we would know is if he was currently suspended.
Okay.
Which he wasn't.
Okay.
And obviously he's fought for the World Championship several times, been a unified world champion. So no, and that's why we put VADA testing in place. Unfortunately, he passed his one in camp, the random testing, but he didn't pass the one on the night. And I look at and just thank God that Galal Yafai come out of that fight safely, because if he didn't, then that changes everything, and it was a hard physical battle that he had to endure, and it wasn't on a level playing field. So we'll be making sure we get the right rewards for Galal Yafai.
Okay, good stuff. Eddie, I'll let you go. Appreciate your time, mate.